webinar is being recorded on YouTube, which you can look at any time. Tomorrow, we'll send you an email with a link to the recording and the slides. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Russell. Thank you, Russell.
Thanks, Jenny. Gillian, we don't seem to have slides up, or at least not on my screen. There we go. So thank you and welcome all. So as Jenny says, I'm the deputy chair at Lighter Footprints, but my role today is being your resident energy nerd who loves all things electric. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the basics. Next slide, please, Julia. And then Trent's going to go into some more of the details. So the questions which you might be asking, and hopefully we're going to answer some of these. If you're not asking them, then perhaps we're going to explain to you why you should be asking these before you jump in and get a battery. So why do you need one? What are you likely to want to achieve? How big should your solar be? How big should your battery be? Do you really need to combine them together? What are the particular bells and whistles do you need to think about? How important are financials to you? I'm going to keep banging on that having a battery without matching it to a good tariff plan is not necessarily good economics. Then Trent's going to go into a little more detail about some of the technology. So what's available, what's going to be the best battery for me. Perhaps there's some technologies that you're better off to avoid. He'll tell you a little bit about what to look for in a supplier and installer, a bit about rebates and incentives, and some of the risks that are out there. Thanks, Julia. So if you remember nothing else from today, my boss many years ago told me, tell them 3 points and hope they remember that. So the 3 points I really want you to remember is, before you jump into a battery, try and be clear about what you're trying to achieve. This is a 5, 10, 15-year investment, so you don't want to jump in and make too many rash decisions. I've said it before, I'll say it again, combine your batteries with a tariff plan that's optimized for each other. And this is just a general point of view of if you see something in your letterbox or on midday TV, it's probably not going to be a good solution for you. So largely ignore those brochures, etc. Thanks. So what do you want to achieve when you are looking at a battery? Do you want blackout protection? Now, although the grid in metropolitan Melbourne is pretty good, it still goes out occasionally. Do you just want to consume all that excess solar, which up until 18 months ago, you were getting a reasonable feed-in tariff for, and now you're not? As tariffs keep going up, peak electricity prices, the prices between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. typically are getting higher. A battery hopefully can avoid you having to pay for that expensive electricity. Like me, do you want to actually stop paying for electricity full stop? Is getting a battery and solar all part of a concerted plan to fully electrify your house? And do you want to do the right thing by the community by helping your battery strengthen the grid, make it more resilient, and lower prices for everyone? You probably think, yeah, maybe all of those look good, but obviously some are going to be more important than others. Next, please. A quick intro to what a solar battery looks like. And this is at a very dumbed down level. In most cases, solar is going to create electricity, DC, direct current electricity through your solar panels. And it's currently going through an inverter to convert it to AC, which is what your house uses. But if you include a battery in there, which is also a DC device, it can store some of that energy that's coming off your solar before it's consumed into your house. And in some cases, before you actually export it out to the grid. Thanks. I know I'm an engineer and I like talking about these sort of things, but there's a few fundamental that's really important to try and understand. And people get some of these terms intermixed. you think about the power of the battery, the kilowatts or the watts, as how much flow you've got. Likewise, kilowatt hours is the energy, which is the storage. So when you're talking about a battery, you talk about how big is the tank, how much water are you keeping, for instance, which is in kilowatt hours. But then there's the rate at which you are filling or emptying it, which is in kilowatts. So you need to understand both of those. So typically we talk about a 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt hour battery. So that means you can discharge or charge that battery at 5 kilowatts and it stores 10 kilowatt hours, which you could, if you're discharging at a full 5 kilowatts, that would last you 2 hours. But if you're only discharging at 2 kilowatts, that 10 kilowatt hours gives you 5 hours. So there are a few basics that you need to think about. Next, please. So how big do you want your battery? And that's going to depend a bit about your household. How much energy do you use? How much do you use today? How much do you use during winter? How much are you going to use when you've got an EV in your driveway? How much are you going to use when you've got 2 EVs in your driveway? What happens when your full house is fully electric and you've got electric heating during winter? Will also depend on how much solar you've got. So what's the right balance between the size of your solar and the size of your battery? Again, it depends on your objectives. How important is extended backup? Now, in non-metro areas, it might be important that you dimension a battery to last for a couple of days. Not so much a problem in metro Melbourne, where our outages, although they are occasional, they're not generally very long. We'll talk a little bit about bidirectional charging. So if you've got your EV there, the big EV on wheels in your, the big battery on wheels in your driveway, is that going to be able to provide some capacity? And then there's some other things about how you intend to use it. Do you actually expect to sell energy back to the grid and try and make some money from it? Next, please. Some of the functionality you need to think about. Blackout protection I've spoken about. Ability to export back into the grid. You usually think it's a given, but you really need to make sure that you buy a battery and have your installer configured to configure it to do that. You probably want to be able to configure timers to be able to charge and discharge your battery or self-consume when you want. You may want to be able to remotely control it. You may want to be able to do it when you're away on holidays. Your supplier might be able to want to control it for you to be able to do fault finding, etc. You need to decide whether you want a 1 or 3 phase system, and that will depend on what your house wiring is. There's a few different levels of integration with your solar that you can talk through and think through, and Trent will be talking about that later. Also, some other bits and pieces that I've mentioned there that you need to think about. Cheers. Next. Economic considerations. The ground rule, the basic rule that I usually say is if say you're getting a $15,000 battery, which is about typical for a medium-sized solar system and a medium-ish battery these days, if you're spending $15,000 and you're thinking about this as an investment over 10 years, really you want your battery to be saving you $1,500 a year. Now, if you're only using $1,000 worth of electricity per year, then a battery is not going to save you $1,500. But if you're spending $2,000, $3,000 per year on electricity, then a battery's got a great opportunity to save you money. There's a couple of graphs on the side there which show my electricity usage over the day, over the year. These sort of graphs are easily available from your electricity distributor, in our case, City Power or United Energy, and I've got the links there where you can download and graph your data. And that will give you an indication as to how much energy you are using per season and per time of day, which is really important. As I said before, you might want to try and avoid all of your peak hour usage or your evening usage. If you are graphing and can see the usage like this, you can then predict, well, okay, this is how much I'm typically using in those hours during winter or during summer, and that will give you an indication as to how big you should mention your battery. Next, please. I said I'm going to bang on about it, but lining up a tariff with your battery is pretty important. If you're on a flat rate tariff, like I've said there, if you say you're paying 25 cents per kilowatt hour, regardless of the time of day, then a battery's possibly going to save you a little bit, but not going to save you a lot. If you've got a typical peak off-peak tariff where, as I said before, peak between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. might be as much as 35, 40, in some cases up to 50 cents per kilowatt hour, and then maybe 20 cents elsewise, then you can use your battery so that you don't have to pay that 35 cent peak rate. The third option that I've got there is an extension of that, where maybe you've got multiple tariffs. Instead of just having two, you might have 3 or 4 different tariffs per time of day. And these are coming into vogue. The government is now talking about a solar share, a solar soaker tariff, which provides the opportunity for you to buy electricity for free for a few hours of the day. Now, the retailers aren't going to lose money, so typically they're going to say, well, okay, we'll give you free power during this time of day, but we will boost your power at other times of day. The beauty of a battery is you can take advantage of buying the free power during the day and completely avoid those higher prices. Amber, we might talk about later if we have time, is an opportunity to actually, instead of just having 2 or 3 different tariff times, Amber tracks the wholesale market rate of electricity, which changes every 5 minutes depending upon supply and demand. And consequently, you can buy or even be paid for electricity during the day and then be paid to export it during the night. So opportunity to make some more money there, but it's quite complicated and not for the faint-hearted. And VPPs are another option, which Trent will perhaps talk about in a little bit more detail. Next, please. One of the things I keep getting asked of, okay, I'm considering a battery, but I'm also considering an EV. Why don't I just wait and use my EV as my battery? A little while before that actually becomes completely commonplace, both from a charger perspective, from an electrical connection perspective, from a car perspective. Those standards are still emerging. One of the other issues is for you to use your car as a battery, it needs to be plugged in, which means every time you come home, you need to plug your car in. Every time you leave, you've got to pull it out again. That becomes a little bit of a hassle in some cases. So my preference is to have a small home battery and then perhaps top it up with your car if and when you can use it. So there's some systems out there that already have this sort of capability and more are becoming available. Next, please. Well, that's all I had to say for the moment, and I'll hand over to Trent. There's a few links that of extra information that you might find useful that you can chase. You will have access to these slides. They'll be online tomorrow, so you can click through the links there. And now I'll hand over to Trent. But before that, a reminder, if you could put up the next slide, of some housekeeping. Oops, we've slipped. Just a reminder from a housekeeping perspective to use your Q&A buttons on your Zoom screen to send us questions. And can I suggest that have a look at some of the other questions that are there first, and you've got the opportunity to upvote questions that you like, and that will put them to the top of the list when we go to answer them in the Q&A session. So here's Trent. Trent's been a good friend of Electrified Warranties. He's the founder and MD of All Electric Homes. And pretty much as it says on the tin, Trent has built his business based around helping people like you and I electrify their homes and get rid of gas. So thanks, Trent. Over to you.
Thanks, Russell, and welcome everyone. It's great to see we've got 100 participants online, so this is a very good outcome. So thanks for Lighter Footprints for putting this on. I'll just give you guys a bit of a quick background of who I am. Yeah, my name's Trent Jones. I've been in the electrical industry just over 20 years now. And for the past 13 years, I've built 3 trades-based businesses. Our first one being an electrical company. We then built a plumbing business and then a refrigeration business. And with those 3 businesses, we've built all electric homes. And all electric homes has been purposely focused on helping every Australian reduce their cost of living by removing the inefficient gas appliances and going full electric. So I've got quite a unique set of understanding around every technology in the home and how we can actually pull it out and replace it with electric. And which brings us to today's discussion around batteries. As we fully electrify homes, it's imperative that we put batteries in for multiple reasons. And I'm just going to sort of go through a bit of the journey from the installation point of view, so from the installer's perspective, and just give you guys a bit of an understanding of what sort of journey to expect when going to market and looking for a supplier. So yeah, I'll try to keep it simple, guys, and yeah, let's have a great time. So next slide, please. So with the whole solar and battery industry, there's been so many policy shifts and changes over the years. So how we used to talk about solar and batteries changes. It changes every 6 months, and that's not because the product or the solution by putting solar on the roof isn't changing. It might change, or the advice might change around a policy shift. So if there's a rebate reduction or an increase, that might change the way how we talk about solar. And it has a huge impact. And so I'm just going to touch lightly on sizes. So matching the right size to the household is important. Before this battery subsidy did come in, it was super important that we got it right, because there wasn't much relief or support to oversize the systems. Now these rates always shifting. It just depends on what your objectives are. And Russell spoke about a few things earlier about energy and what that means and is. And ideally, the idea of a battery is to try to be big enough so you can draw from the battery during the night. And when you go to work the next day or the sun rises, the sun can fill that battery back up. And that's a well-balanced system. My view is that you want to be able to support your nighttime load 100%, and then at least have 50% of battery in reserve so it can be there just in case the power doesn't come back on or whatnot. I like to see that little bit of safety there. But yeah, just to give you the 3 sizes. So a 5 to 8 kilowatt capacity is a really small home. The average family home is a little bit bigger than that, up to 16 kilowatts now, 10 to 16 kilowatts. And then a fully electrified house, it's bigger, can see up to 30 kilowatts. And in cases we've seen, up to 48, just because of how the battery subsidy works, which we'll go into a bit detail soon. Next slide, please. Russell mentioned there's types of battery configurations, and when you do speak to your installers, they will talk to you about AC and DC coupled batteries. And to put it simply, an AC coupled battery just connects onto the AC side. So you've heard the terms AC and DC. The solar power from the roof, it generates DC power, and the power in your homes is AC power. So when we want to use that energy inside the house, we've got to convert it, and that's what the inverter is called, and that inverts the power from DC back to AC, so it's usable in your home. So it's a really important meeting point for power, and it can sound confusing, but it's really simple. It just turns it from one type of power to another, so you can use it. And the batteries are best charged direct, so DC power. So an AC coupled battery system is great for retrofit environments that have hybrid inverters, essentially. So if you've got an existing system, it will most likely be a non-hybrid inverter. And so an AC coupled battery to connect onto a system like that, you'll need to change the inverter type. So if you've got an existing system, most of the time the system's more than 3 years old, you'll be looking at upgrading that inverter. So that's where this sort of system comes in. Next slide, please. We've got a DC coupled system. Now, this is the best way to connect your solar to a battery. There's no conversion required. It can charge a battery direct. Great for new builds and where you've got the ability to start from scratch, essentially. So in the retrofit environment, you won't see too many of these configurations of battery systems alone that just connect to DC. And then we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about an AC-DC coupled system. Now, these are the best sort of systems for existing dwellings and also new, because it gives us two options. We can connect things by AC or DC. So these systems do cost a little bit more. So if you are on a budget and you don't require a system like this, then we revert back to a cheaper style. But yeah, I won't go into too much detail about these things, but they're the three sort of types of systems that are out there. And so a discussion will always be had about this. So next slide, thanks. So we just want to just talk about the importance of warranties. So like we've seen for many, many years, anytime that we get some type of government rebate on any scheme, we do see an increase of just pop-up companies that are coming through all the time. Now, these pop-up companies are generally a too good to be true scenario. And like Russell said earlier, letter drops, ads, stuff like that, where they spend a lot on marketing, but they don't actually have, they're a shell company, and they usually use a subcontract network to do their installs. The issues that we find here is that they're here for a short time, make a bit of cash, and then they run off. So the warranty side of things is where things get caught out because there's no one to support that. So just be very cautious, especially with the suppliers. Just do a few checks. You can just do a few social licensing checks to see who they are and make sure they've got some good reviews, and speak to the guys and make sure that they understand the whole process. So, you know, when things go wrong, your installer should help you all the way through. Generally, what happens is that if you've got a faulty product, the first point of call should be your installer who installed it. What they'll do is they'll direct you either to the manufacturer directly, or if they've got a really good relationship and they're a good outfit, they'll do the warranty support call for you, and they'll ensure that you are supported all the way through. Even if it is a manufacturer's warranty claim, they need to support you the whole way through. What we see sometimes is that if they don't have a good support system, they will just direct you to go direct to manufacturer to make the phone call. Now, what we've seen happen is that the manufacturer could then only report to you, and then your installer won't have much of an idea of what's going on. And so when it comes time to some issues down the track, I suppose it's just a good two-way communication process when you have these warranty issues. So that's super important. And with some of the manufacturers too, it's really important that you are getting good gear, because there's plenty of manufacturers bringing products into Australia that are cheap, that we actually don't have great manufacturer support. So from an installer's perspective, we're using cheap product. When things go wrong, if the manufacturer doesn't have onshore local support, things can get really hard and messy as well. So product and also installer, it's really important that you've got that, both of them dialed in. So next slide, please. So yeah, just as I sort of mentioned before about those warranty claims, the installer should lodge a claim for you, the manufacturer should support that claim, and then the customer should just let everyone know in the process of what's going on. But always a good installer should do all steps for you and hold your hand along the way. Next slide, please. So battery sizing and tariffs and blackout protection. So most manufacturers now with the batteries have blackout protection. And in my view is if you're spending all the money on a battery, ensure to get it. The additional cost to do blackout protection can range from $300 to $2,000. It will just depend on your type of installation. But the advantage is that blackout protection means that if the power goes down from the grid, you're still going to have your lights on. And I think it's just a no-brainer if you're going to get a battery. For the extra few $100 at minimum, or a couple of $1,000, really have a think about how important that is to you, especially as we get further along. You know, if we're trying to future-proof, and again, these are conversations that you should be having with your installers. How far down the track are you trying to future-proof? Because there's so many different policy shifts that will be coming in with batteries. And I think they'll come in the next 5 years. So I think it's definitely, if you're going to be making a purchase now, and try to get a battery that's got these abilities. And I'll go further into that a bit later as well about bidirectional charging and all the support around that. Can it charge your car as well? So if you're going to spend the money on a battery, just consider what your home's going to look like in the next 5 years. If you're not going to be there and you're just trying to just solve a short-term problem, then again, that's just another conversation you should be having with your installers. So next slide, please. So the government incentives, 1st of July last year, the Cheaper Home Batteries program came out, and it's been super successful. So you essentially get what we call an STC rebate. It's the same rebate that we've been applying to solar PV panels for the last 15 years. You get it just for buying the product. And your installer should and will claim these rebates for you at point of sale. So you guys don't really have to do anything apart from sign a document saying that you've claimed the rebate. There is a second rebate that doesn't apply to the battery side, but it is Solar Victoria rebate. If you are installing solar panels on your roof and you are eligible, you can get a further $1,400 off the cost of the solar system. But we'll go a bit further into the battery subsidy. So next slide, please. So it came into effect July 1st last year, and the program had awesome results. I think just some metrics, if I go back, the year prior to the whole year prior to the batteries rebate coming into effect, we did like 7,000 batteries across the nation that year. The first week that the program launched, we did 7,000 batteries. So we like 52 times the rate of installation. And then we kept seeing that trend go forward into the following months. And we also saw people taking full advantage of the rebate structure and claiming big systems that weren't really designed. And we saw lots of installation companies pushing for batteries that weren't suitable or weren't required. And so, as predicted, the government have come in and modified the program, and the battery subsidies will remain as they are until May 1st this year. And so where we used to have up to $17,500 in subsidies available, it's at a much bigger reduction now. So I'll go through the next few slides about that reduction. So those of you who understood the battery rebate before, I'm just going to quickly go through the changes. And those of you who don't know it at all, great, you don't need to understand how it used to work. We'll just talk about where it's going as of 1st of May. Next slide, please. So May 1st this year, so a great thing happened after the success of the outcome of the first $2.3 billion that was put towards this program. They nearly tripled it, or they did triple it to $7.2 billion. And they've also put some restrictions in, which I think it's great that they've done that, because they're just creating the program to get across more Aussies, because if they had kept it at its current rate, we would have run out of it this year. And so everyone else would have been left out. Next one, thanks. So it's quite confusing, and I think a lot of installers are going to go through some pain points through here. So I know a lot of us in the industry already are trying to gear up for the tranches and all the rebate adjustments. But traditionally, what's been happening in Australia over the last decade and then some, we used to get an STC reduction every year, and the batteries were aligned to that. And now part of the reform is the batteries STCs are going to start reducing every 6 months, or being affected at some point. So it's a moving thing. And so I suppose the simplest way to put it for you guys is that every 6 months that you wait, the battery subsidy drops, and it drops, and it drops, and it keeps going. So right now, if you want to get the maximum value from the rebates, you've got to get your installation done before May 1st. So that's not a hell of a lot of time, but that's if you want to maximize the value. So yeah, so take note that the STC factor does drop, and it will continue to drop. And so if we go to the next slide, please. They've also introduced a tiered STC factor for battery capacity. And sorry, I didn't explain what an STC was, but basically that is the acronym for the rebate that you get. So it's worth about $37 in STC at market rate currently. And so before, they used to allow us to claim 100% of the STC factor all the way up to 50 kilowatts. And so now they're doing it in stages. So they're going to give us 100% subsidy for the first 14 kilowatts installed at your property. And you can see here on this slide, that equates to roughly around a $3,500 subsidy. That's great. You're maximising. That hasn't changed. That's still what we can get today. Where it's changed is going from 14 kilowatts to up to 28 kilowatts. You're only going to receive 60% of the subsidy on that range. And then from 28 to 50 kilowatt hours, it drops again into 15% of the subsidy. So I've given you some just some round figures there so you can understand if you're getting quotes. This should be market rate. This is sort of what your installers should be putting on your quotes. So please take note of that and ask questions if they don't. Some installers, it just depends on their business model. Sometimes they like to put the out-of-pocket price, their price high, and then also show the rebates coming in much higher just to look like they're discounting you more. So be careful with those types of traps. It's important to understand that the STC should be paid out around $37 per STC. Because what guys will do is that they will just ramp everything up and make themselves look like you're getting a good deal. So there's no restrictions around how they can do that. There is certain criteria how their quotes and invoices must look, and that has to align with government policies around it all. But yeah, they'll still always try their best to pull wool over your eyes. Next slide, please. So yeah, I've just given you an example here how they're calculated. Now you can jump online. These calculators are free tools to use. They're on the Cheaper Battery Subsidy website, so jump on there. But yeah, just giving you an example of how they break the STCs down. And so you can put in what size battery that you want, and it will calculate all your STC. So you just make sure you align them when you get into quotes that the installers will have it right. Now, like I said before, there's going to be some confusion with all this. Some installers will be trying their best to align with all this stuff. But if they're not using good technology and good software to do their quotes, they could get things wrong. And I'm just talking from an installer's point of view. And if you are going through some pain points there, try to give your installers a bit of leeway. I know a lot of them are trying their best. And so it already is very confusing for everyone, including the installers. So next slide, please. So let's just say you've got an installer to come and give you a quote. And I just want to sort of go through with you some expectations of what they should be doing for you and also what you should be doing for them, because it's a two-way street here. And if they're looking after you, it should come back the same way. So the installer should provide a detailed quote with system design and a line item of the total cost of the system, what rebates you get in, and any government incentives you get in. That should all be itemised on there. They should also do all your rebates at point of sale as well. They will also manage your, as Russell mentioned before, the power authority. So you've got United Energy or City Power in this LGA. So they as soon as the installation is done, they should be reconfiguring your meter for you and managing all that for you as well. Now, most installers, if not all, will be always asking for a deposit up front. Now, it's super important that cash flow with these rebate programs for the installer's perspective is a huge risk. And a lot of businesses actually went out of business when the battery subsidy came in because they didn't understand the cash flow gap. When a rebate gets done, it's about 120 days. They got to wait till they get that money paid back to them. And so when they request a deposit, you sort of got to understand that 40% of that entire invoice, they're not going to get for another 120 days, most of the time after they've done your installation. So the money that you pay is only 60% of the installation costs, sorry, what the installer needs, and they generally need to wait. So if companies aren't asking for deposits, that's a red flag to me, because it means they're not managing the cash flow properly, and they could get themselves into a spot of bother if they're not looking at that as their business as well. So again, just things to look out for. And again, I've seen it's not uncommon for up to 50%. I wouldn't be paying any more than that. But it just depends on the size of the business and sort of who they are. What's also important from the customer is to provide the right identification and documents, and make sure that you submit the Solar Victoria rebate if you're applying for that. Do it in due time, because that can take and delay some things as well. And so some people get lost in the Solar Victoria portals. Again, a good installer should help and support you through that. And one last thing too, just if you've got heritage listed properties, which I know probably a lot will apply where you guys are, make sure you, again, go to cancel. They've got some great links on their websites where you can start asking these questions. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of what a quote should look like, right? It should specify system size, exact brand, make, quantity, size of panels. Same with the inverter, breakdown of the make, model, everything there. Same with the battery. You can see on this quote too, we've got the total cost. It's got a line item of what the STCs are, how many, and calculate at what price. Same with the batteries and so forth. This all should be transparent. I think every installer should be showing you at least this basic breakdown, because yeah, you can ask questions around it and check it against market conditions. And lots of the software out there should be able to give you a proposed reduction in savings. So they should be able to say, well, if you're spending this much, putting this size solar system should save you this much. Now, it's really important to note where I see a lot of installers pull wool over eyes around the savings component. Just make sure that they've entered your bill data incorrectly, because what a lot of them will do is if you don't share your bill data, or if they don't ask for bill data, it's questionable. The savings aren't going to be accurate because, you know, some people load up their daily supply charge, say, well, you're paying $1.80, and they could say that you're paying 40 cents a kilowatt hour to consume electricity. And then when they go solar, they reduce it back down to like 24 cents and a smaller day rate. So just be careful with the assumptions, because they can make a quote look very, very convincing, but just look at that assumption data. It's really important. Next slide, please. So let's just say your installer's come out and you've had a great experience. They've sent you the quote. You're really happy with it. The next part of the journey is accepting and paying that deposit. Generally, once that deposit's paid, most companies will initiate next steps. Those next steps will be ordering all your stock. They'll start the process of applying for Solar Victoria if you've got it, or they might just start loading your profile in your distributor portal. So yeah, it does start the process off really well, and it should go well for both sides. So next slide, please. And so what this is doing here is it's just showing you what the application and approval phase sort of looks like. And yeah, I spoke about this on the last slide, sorry guys, but yeah, so the installer will initiate the Solar Victoria and start doing the application for United Energy. Next slide, please. And if Solar Victoria, if you are claiming Solar Victoria rebate, it is a portal you guys you'll get an email and you will have to fill out a little bit of data. And if that's required, it's a pretty easy exercise. Next slide. So once all that's sort of done, all light gets ticked, especially with Solar Victoria and you're doing solar with your battery system, you will be getting a QR code if you are getting that rebate. And now it's really important that you give that to your installer the day of installation. They must scan that QR code if you want to get that $1,400 Solar Victoria rebate. If you're just getting a battery installed, there's no QR code, there's no Solar Victoria. The process is much easier because the Solar Victoria application can take a bit of time. Next slide, thanks. So now and then the installation occurs. So most battery systems, 1 to 2 days at max, unless it's a long run, it shouldn't take much longer than that. So this is just a typical example of a battery installation. Next slide. And then once it's done, the inspector will come out. Now, again, this is another problem with the industry. We didn't have enough inspectors in the industry before this battery subsidy came in. This is in Victoria. So we're already under-resourced. And just so you guys are aware, every time that a solar system's installed or a battery's installed, a third-party inspector must come out to inspect it. They give the final certificate, and that's when your system can be energised. It's the law. Energy Save Victoria have stipulated that no solar system or battery is to be operated or turned on until this inspector comes. It's created a bit of a problem in the industry. Like I said, we didn't have enough inspectors as it was, and now we're doing 7,000 batteries a week across the nation plus more. It's taken 6-10 weeks for inspectors to come out, and I've seen it's creating a lot of noise and problems with customers, and there's really nothing we can do about it. What we are working on really fast is we're trying to train inspectors up, but it takes a year. It takes a year minimum to get an inspector at the level they need to be at in order to sign these off. So if the cheaper home, if Bowen had have contacted industry and let us know this was coming, we would have been better prepared for it from a supply point of view, but we just weren't. And so that's where we're at. So it's not your installer's fault. We just overloaded the inspectors network. And don't forget too, these inspectors are doing all our other inspectors. Every time a new house gets on supply, every time a switchboard upgrade gets done, it's not just the solar and battery industry. We're trying to use them for all other things in Victoria. So yeah, that can take quite a while. It's a big pain point for everyone. No one gets paid, by the way. Customer won't pay final bill until inspectors come, and no SDCs can be claimed for anything until the inspector comes. So if the inspector takes 6 weeks after install's been done, that 120-day cash flow I said to you, installer, bang that out to 200 days. It will go on, and it is creating a problem in the industry. Next slide, please. And then finally, the rebates come back to the installer. Again, just making it really important. I have seen many companies go under trying to do the right thing because they're taking this workload on and not understanding the consequences of the rebates. So it's one of the biggest problems with the industry if they're not paying attention. So please, again, do your due diligence with your installer. Make sure that they're capable and comfortable, and then you should be okay. Next slide, please. So I've just got some examples of battery costs. There's 3 different types here. We've got the Tesla Powerwall 3s. They're still priced at the highest point of the market. They're not that great anymore. They've lost a bit of their market share, purely around just functionality now. We've got a Sigenergy battery sitting in the middle there. That's proving to be one of the world's best-selling batteries now. I know Australia are the biggest user of Sigenergy batteries, and they're becoming a bit of a rising star because their technology can actually do everything that we need to be done in the next 5 years. They've got bidirectional charging capabilities. You can whack a EV charger battery cell in here, so you can do direct DC charging. Really good, easy system. They had a bit of an issue a few months ago where some of the plugs were burning out. They've done a recall. They've rectified that pretty swiftly, and it was a really good exercise and good support. And then we've got the Sungrow battery on the right here. That's sort of a mid-range battery, and just showing you the pricing point. So I tried to give you 3 similar size batteries in kilowatt hours, and so you can understand the different price points. The Sungrow on the right, it's cheaper because of its functionality, right? It can't do all the things that the Sigenergy can do. And it comes around to like terminology, like Russell said earlier, VPP. The Sungrow on the right won't allow you to trade your power or sell it to anyone else, but the Sigenergy in the middle will. The Sungrow on the right is a DC coupled system. The Sigenergy in the middle is an AC DC coupled system. So they've just got different functionalities, and that's where the price comes. Like everything, you do get more, you get what you pay for, but it's good to understand. Sometimes the Sigenergy isn't suitable, and sometimes a Sungrow is not suitable. So it'll just come down to your budget, what are you trying to do, and just understanding what's it. There's many batteries out there, guys. I'm obviously not going through a wall. I just gave you some right there. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through now some of where we can install these things. So inside installations are preferably the best. It's where they'll last the longest and the weather can't get to them. What we find most common is your garage or a utility room if it's non-habitable. I'll go through some of the prohibited locations in a few more slides. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry, go back one slide. You'll see in front of this battery system here that there's bollards. Now, they're absolutely essential if we're putting it where a car can hit the batteries. It's called mechanical protection, and so we must fit them. And it's good to see that we've got some white ones there because we were using yellow ones for quite a while and they looked a bit ugly. So it's great that the manufacturers are aligning with market demand. Next slide, please. This is just an example of an outdoor installation. It's on a wall bracket, it's hung, and it's got a little roof over the top of it just to protect it from the weather. Now, this particular one's sitting on the south side, so it's not going to get any sun directly on it, and that's what we want to see. We don't want batteries in direct sunlight, and there's no other choice. We must come up with some type of shade to give them a longer life. We actually won't, the inspectors won't sign them off, and you won't get warranties if they're in the full sun. So this is just an example down a tight sidewalk, and that's what they can look like. Next slide. And locations to avoid. So some high risk non-compliant sites. So habitable rooms, what that means, anywhere humans occupied. It's just a no-no. No direct sun exposure, no roof cavities or sealed confined spaces. We can't put these in your attics. We can't put them in, an enclosed basement area. And near flammable materials or flood zones. So there's some of the just things that are an absolute no-no. And there's all clearances are next to windows, next to fences, stuff like that. So just be careful. If you think you want to put it near where a window is or near a door is to your house, we just got to consider the minimum distances. Depending on manufacturer, they'll change between 600 and 900 mil, and also off your fences too. Like if you've got tight walkways down. Again, it will come down to different manufacturers, but anywhere from 600 mil to a meter, you need clearance in front of these batteries. So just be mindful of all that. Next slide. And yeah, I think that's me done, guys. So yeah, again, why go battery? What's going to encourage you to go battery? My first question is, before you ask yourself the battery question, is what's the purpose? What are you trying to achieve? And that should help you make the next decisions. Because if you've still got gas in your home and you are trying to get a battery, I'd question is why. If it's to reduce your cost of living and to consume the battery at night, if you've still got gas in the house, and if it's a gas hot water or a gas heater, you're not going to get the absolute benefit out of having a battery. So just consider that and just understand your demand. The simplest way to understand what size battery you should get, if you understand what your consumption of energy is overnight or even during the day, let's just say that you consume 20 kilowatt hours per day. That should give you a good idea of battery size. I would be looking at a 20 kilowatt hour battery. Again, like I said to you earlier in the piece, you want it to cover the entire night load and have 50% remain in the morning. That's in my view a good battery size, because you're giving room for redundancy there, just in case something goes wrong. So if your installer's not asking to view your existing bills and or energy data, and they're trying to sell you a battery, it should be questionable, because they're not matching the battery to your current consumption. So just ask those questions. Next slide, please. And that's me done, guys. Thanks for your time. I'll be here at the end for any questions. Yeah, thank you.
So I'll jump in here. So Glenn and I have been furiously typing answers as we've been going to Q&A. We've left some that are best left to Trent. So thanks for all those questions. And I think Sarah, some of the more popular ones we might just talk through at the end. In absence of Jenny, I'll introduce. We've now got three house owners who are going to talk about their experience with batteries. Some you've already seen and heard, but Glenn's going to talk about his experience. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, Russell, and thanks, Trent, for all that great explanation. I'm based in Hawthorne. My wife and our 4 sons live in a house which is a heritage listed one. We've had solar for a long time and been on the journey of taking the various gas systems out of the house and electrifying, but also our house has had the intention of trying to reduce the leakage of energy, and our use of energy is actually very low for a big family. So Trent and others have talked of 20 kilowatt hours of use in the house. Ours was sitting around 7 or 8 kilowatts before we electrified, and then kilowatt hours before we electrified, and now we're sitting around 12 or 13 kilowatt hours per day. So I'll ask Jenny, ask if we go to the next slide, which shows a picture system, Google image of the top of the roof. We can see the solar panels on one angle of the roof in the centre of the image there are facing to the west, so we get the afternoon sun. And then the solar panels, which look slightly different on the right-hand side of the image, are facing to the north, and they get the best angle on the all-day sun. And our battery's sitting down at the bottom of that system, so of that image. So if we go to the next image, we can sort of get an idea. So I'm showing here that this day in June, which is, you can see in that top right, 21st of June last year, which is a cold day. It was really miserable day. We can see the battery there in the red line. So the state of charge of the battery was very low. And then I've got because I'm very interested in this, I managed to switch to the equivalent of the Solar Saver tariff that has been popular in the press, and it's already available in Victoria. The company I've been using is OVO. And so basically topping up the battery. So you can see in the middle of the day, I've got this free energy coming into the house, and I've filled the battery up, and then I've just used the battery. And so this is a very bad solar day. There's almost no solar generating. There's a little bit, that's that yellow colour in the middle of the image. Mostly I've filled up the battery using the free energy in the middle of the day. Now, if you go to the next image, please. So if we think of the summer, we've got plenty of solar, and that's that yellow line. The yellow line in the middle of the day has got lots of solar, and that's filled up my battery, and basically within a few hours of the sun coming up, I've got a full battery. In this image here, it's about 20 past 10. I've got a full battery already, and that's what's happening at this time of year. So if we go to the next image. So this is a winter image showing that we've got a much smaller amount of solar, and it basically takes till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, even when there's a good sunny day, to get the battery charged up. That's what that hour of day 15, that's the military sort of 24-hour clock. So 15 meaning that's 3 p.m, where that dotted line, that's the battery state of charge, gets to its maximum. So the point is that in those instances, if the sun doesn't come out on a not sunny day, I've really got to rely on that energy top up. And so I actually changed the settings on my battery to export during most of the year, but just in that winter months, I change it to take advantage of that free energy to top up my battery. So we've managed to basically export enough so that our bills are about $3 when the every 2 months or whatever, when the bill comes, which is mostly just a bit of connection charge. So basically we don't pay for our connection to the grid, and we do export quite a bit of energy. So go to the next image. I think this might be the last image. So basically the costings for us was solar plus battery, and I mentioned that our house was already well insulated and we had pretty low energy use, so we didn't need to buy a big battery. So our solar plus battery was 16,000. Our savings on was pretty much all the winter heating on gas. That was where most of our gas use was. And our electricity bill, if we were paying for that, the total of what we're using, it's roughly 2,000 a year. So basically, because of the very high level of insulation on the house, we were able to get a payback on our solar and batteries as little as 4 years. Now, that's not going to be everyone's case. That's a very, very fast payback in our case. but it's to do with the efforts and interest that we've had in trying to make the house a lower energy house. I think that's my last slide, and people can ask questions about how I've achieved my numbers, and then over to you, Jenny.
Are there any questions for Glen at the moment, or we do them?
Your microphone's pointing up, Jenny.
Oh, sorry. Any questions for Glen at the moment, or will I start? I'll start. Julian, can we have the next slide, please? So our journey towards a sustainable house. In 2007, we got 6 167 watt panels on our northern roof. And they chugged along until about 2023, and the inverters stopped working, and it was all a bit hard. And in 2024, we did a bathroom renovation, and that was our opportunity to get off gas. So we replaced the gas solar boosted hot water, replaced our cooktop, and got rid of our 30-year-old or more central heater. And then in 2025, after the federal government rebate for the battery came in, we were lucky enough to be able to put in new solar panels and a battery. Next slide, please, Julian. So our aim is to generate as much of our own power as possible and have outage protection. The challenges for us, as you can see in the picture, is we've got a bit of an itty-bitty roof. It's 2-story, it's terracotta, and on our north side there's a neighbouring tree that's pretty big, which gives us great shade in the summer, but it can shade our best northern roof. And I'm not a tech nerd, but I really want to do what I can for the environment. Next slide, please, Julian. So there's our system, hasn't got its shade on it, and we went for the Sungrow panels and inverter and battery, and our aim was, again, as I said, to be able to generate as much power as we can with our odd roof. So we ended up with 6 on the north, 12 on the south, 5 on the east, and 3 on the west. Next slide, please, Julian.
Jenny, sorry, Julian, can you just go back? I think it's worth pointing out there that Jenny's house is weatherboard, and you can see the fireproof sheeting that's been put as mandatory requirement to just on the rare chance that there is an issue to protect the house.
Yep, thank you. And that's our bathroom. So there's results since we were connected to the grid in September of 2025. We've produced 4 megawatt hours of power, and we've fed in 3.3 megawatt hours. The lowest production for us is forecast to be in June, not surprisingly, of 15.7 kilowatt hours. And as to when we might get our payback, I guess I'm uncertain, because we've changed a lot recently with our new heat pump hot water and our split systems for heating. So I really don't think we've got a steady energy use pattern yet, but ask me in a year and I'll have an answer. But I do think for about 9 months of the year, we shouldn't really be needing to draw any energy from the grid, and for a lot of the time contributing. Next slide, please. So what's next for us is to sort out my energy provider and tariff, and to really be optimizing the use of our solar panels and battery, because a lot of the time at the moment, our production is curtailed in the summer because it stops at the 5 kilowatts. I'll continue show people the little app on the phone and say, hey, look at this. Panels are making this much power and it's going into the grid and into our battery, and look, I don't have to buy anything. And we do hope to then convert our Corolla hybrid, replace it with an EV, and that's, again, will change our energy requirements. And meanwhile, I'll keep on enjoying my solar powered e-bike. And that's my bit. Thank you. Over to you, Russell.
Thanks, Jenny. So next slide, please, Julian. So I stood back and pretty much followed the approach I've told you guys earlier. What were my objectives? So I had, like Jenny, I had an old solar system which was not scalable. It was using up my valuable north-facing roof space, and it was partially shaded. So I needed to do something. I'm most of the way through electrifying my house. I've got an EV and I've got a heat pump, etc. And sometime this year, I'm hoping to electrify my heating. And I want to be largely self-sufficient. Unlike Jenny, I'm an energy nerd. I want to play. Although I'm finding that even I'm getting bored with playing with the battery. It just sits there and does its own thing most of the time. So what did I think about was how big did it need to be? What brand did I like? Which country did I want the battery from? How to find a good installer? Who provided the right sort of support? And to an extent, economics, although this has ended up being as much of a plaything for me. Next, please. So what did I choose? I chose a Sigenergy, which is a DC coupled battery. It allowed me to have my three different PV arrays. So I've got a north facing, I've got a west facing, I've got south facing. It's given me the opportunity to put in a DC bidirectional charger in the future, and it's got all the bells and whistles that we could possibly want. But against all of that, because I did this research over a year ago now, Sigenergy hadn't been in Australia very long. So I had to think about that. As Trent says, they're now the leading battery sales in Australia. I was concerned that it's connected into the Chinese cloud. How did I think about that? What happens if the world situation changes? So I've got a bit of a workaround for that. And as Trent said, they've had an inverter recall. I'm still waiting for mine to be repaired, but I've got it wound down a little bit, so it's perfectly safe. Next, please. So this is what I've got. As I said before, I've got some north facing, I've got some west facing, and I've got a south facing system. This is I'm in a heritage overlay, so I went through the planning permit process with Burundara Council. They wanted to make sure there was nothing terribly visible from the street, so I did a little bit of negotiation and sorted through that. I actually put the council solar heritage resource in the chat, so it's actually quite a good resource. So I've got an 8 kilowatt system, 16 kilowatt hours with 12 kilowatts on the roof. Next, please. I said I'm going to bang on about it. Tariffs again. I'm using a solar soaker tariff, which gives me free power between 11 and 2, and there's got other options that I'm using as well, which we'll talk about in the next slide, please. So it's a company, a Melbourne company called Glowbird, and it's got a few different times. So you can see there between 11 and 2, I get power for nothing. So that's when I charge my EV. That's when I've got a timer on my heat pump hot water, and that's when it runs. During winter, my air conditioning runs during that time. And of course, I charge the battery as well. All of that happens automatically. Then in the evening, you can see I get a bonus for not actually using the grid at all, and I get an extra bonus for exporting. So whereas my normal export to the grid is a relatively low rate, I get a total of 15 cents per kilowatt hour if I export. It says there between 6 and 8, but I've got between 5 and 7. So when I've got plenty of battery capacity, I export during that 2-hour window. I don't do it in winter because I need enough battery capacity to run my heating and the rest of the house during the night. So that green bubble of the super export, I only earn for about 8 months of the year. Next, please. So how's it going? So here's a month-by-month assessment of what's been happening. So this is me in my mostly electric house with an EV that does about 10,000 kilometres per year. And you can see there that even during winter, and in winter I was away, so I was actually selling electricity back to the grid because I wasn't using it that much. But even my worst month when I was home and heating the house, I only paid $5.50. For the rest of the year, I'm typically $10 to $20 to $30 per month in credit. Next, please. So if you look at the total usage of my battery, the yellow is I've generated 8 megawatt hours of electricity from my solar, which has gone about 30% has gone into my battery. I buy I buy, but for 0 cents per kilowatt hour from the grid during that free time I mentioned before. And effectively, that's the only electricity that I buy most of the time. I think I probably put in more solar than I should have, than I needed. I think my battery is probably about the right size for me, because I worry that it's a little bit too small in winter, and I think it's quite too large in summer. So that suggests to me that across the year, it's probably the right amount. I bought this before the cheaper home batteries program came into play. So if that was in play, I probably would have gotten a bigger battery. So effectively, I think the battery's saving me around $1,200 a year, maybe closer to $1,500, depending upon how I look at it. And I've now actually got my gas accounts with the same retailer. So effectively, those credits that you saw on the previous slide for my electricity are paying for my gas. And I think that's it for me, isn't it? It is.
Yes, I think that's it from you, Russell. Thank you so much. So the final portion of the evening today is just going to be a bit of a Q&A between the audience and the speakers, because this is obviously an area where you know, individuals can have some pretty specific questions. So we're keen to give you as much of a chance as possible to ask the experts anything you'd like to know, and I can see that many of you have been in the Q&A popping your questions in as we work through. Russell, Glen, Trent popping some answers in as well. Thank you all for that. I think it's been a really good discussion. But what we might just start by doing is touching on a few of the questions that haven't been answered, especially those that have got a lot of upvotes. And I was all set to ask about timelines here, but Glen, you've jumped ahead and got to it. There's been a bit of interest in the chat about timelines. Henry and Denny are both asking what part of the battery install process has to be completed before May the 1st, 2026 to get the maximum rebate. You know, is it an installation commencement date, the contract signing date, that sort of thing? Glen, you've indicated that the full install and the safety certificate needs to be signed before the 1st of May. But I wonder if any of the panelists would like to jump in with timing remarks, you know, hints and tips, traps for the unwary on timing this journey to make sure it is done by the 1st of May.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Sarah. Yeah, this is going to create a huge inrush in demand. And I know from the installer side, I talked to many of them. We're bracing for it. There's going to be, I think people will leave this to the last minute, and we're going to run out of batteries again. We're going to run out of stock, and also we'll run out of days to get it done. The biggest issue will be is getting things signed off. So if you're lucky, if you get an installation done in March, yeah, I don't know. Like, even if you get it done second week of March, I can't see it being signed off before 1st of May. It's a real hard one. I'm hoping that the regulator will give us a bit of leeway with installations being finished, and we're just waiting on the inspector cohort to come through. But I just don't know. I know that they want to change this, and I'm just not sure how lenient they'll be. So if you don't want to deal with any of that, I would be making action straight away. But then again, don't make a rushed action where you're going to regret it and pick the wrong thing too. So do your research and ensure you get the right product put in.
Great advice. Anyone else have things to add on that, or we'll move along to the next question?
No, I think Trent's the absolute expert there. Trent, one thing that that came to mind when you were talking, which I tried to ask a question, but because I'm part of answering the questions, I couldn't actually ask one of you. Can you talk a little bit more about the rebate eligibility? So federal eligibility, the federal battery scheme, I understand there is no eligibility, there is no means testing, but you only get one shot at it. So that's the case. Whereas for the Victorian solar, it's means tested in a few different directions. And again, you only get one shot at it.
Yeah, that's right. So you can only take, so the Solar Victoria rebate, that's the one for your solar PV panels on your roof. You must have a combined household income of 210 grand or less to be eligible. You must be the homeowner and you must live there. It can't be a rental property. That's essentially it.
There's a
really.
property value as well, isn't there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there is property value. The property has to be worth 3 million or less. And what they do is they go off your rates notice. So put aside what you think it's worth and what you think it will sell for. Whatever it says on your rates notice that's what they'll test you on. So if you tick those 3 boxes, you're good to go. And that unleashes $1,400. You don't have to pay it back. It's yours. You get to keep it, but you claim one per household. So if you claimed it more than 10 years ago, you can do it again. So that's currently the market we're in. And you're right, Russell, with the STCs, you get that by just being a good Samaritan and buying the product. So no means test on that. But so the budget's 7.3 billion. Once it runs out, it runs out. So that's what we've been told. But it could change. And
Solar Vic also have an interest-free loan still, which follows the same eligibility test. You can get, is it $8,000-ish worth of interest-free loan?
No, that interest-free loan was for the battery subsidy, Russell, and that was something that was squashed last July 1 when the new battery rebate came in. And so, so there's no more $8,800 battery loan. So if you did hear about that, it's no longer here. And there is a further $1,400 off under a no-interest loan, and that's for solar PV only. And you do have to pay that back on a weekly payment plan over 4 years. And I think it's $350 a year over the 4 years. So that's how you pay that back.
Interesting. This might be a good time for some questions around payback periods. So Carl asks, when we're considering a battery payback period, shouldn't we consider, well, government rebates we've discussed a little bit, but also the fact that prices in future years are likely to be higher? And then while we're on the topic, people are also interested to know specific questions to ask about the assumptions that are used in calculating those paybacks.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't quite understand that first half of the question about the rebates and the payback.
Sorry about that. Let me go back. So you've spoken about the link with government rebates, but the question is around the potential higher price of power in future years. So I think if I understand the question correctly, how would you take that into consideration when you're considering your battery payback period?
Okay, so we're talking about inflation. Is that what we're talking about? The fact that the price in the future years are likely to be high? Yeah, I'd have to probably ask a question.
Essentially, the increase in energy prices comes into play there as well.
Inflation. Yeah, so again, the smart modeling, it'll depend on your supplier and what software they use. They can load in inflation, and it should be in all proposals. So I know what all the back-end software looks like in many different software programs, and they do factor in inflation in that. Generally speaking, we use a 5% rule of inflation across energy prices.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's a few questions that have come up, and some have been addressed around site visits before the decision to add a battery. So the responses, I think, from Russell are very much in favour of organising a site visit before you accept a quote or a proposal. But yeah, there are a few specific ones around this topic. What a site inspection should cost. Can you insist that the site inspection is done by the person who will be installing? And I might just add on any other remarks that you would like to add around site inspections.
Yeah, listen, not all sites need to be inspected. If it's very clear that the battery is going to go right next to the switchboard and it's all there right in front, and the customer can provide a few photos, just like a hot water heat pump, if it's predictable, it's clear, and the installer's confident, they won't need to go to site. Now, if there's any chance of a query or they're not comfortable with something, 100%. So I'd say 9 times out of 10, suppliers should be going to site to review your installation. And if they don't, again, ask if you want them to, ask them. And they shouldn't be charging you. But then again, in the same aspect too, like we had a query come through last week. This person's had 20 quotes. And so it's hard for the installers to work with people like that as well, because, you know, and this is why you get in some pushback, because installers, again, they're sick and tired of going to many site inspections and not being able to sell a job as well. So that's their view on it. And I think it just needs to be a balance of what information can be provided and what type of installer, because those installers that you get your letter drops, or you might see on the websites, they won't come to your site. And, you know, the ones that are selling you the dream too good to be true, again, the reason why they can keep their costs down too is because they're not coming to site and they're not sending any professional out there to look at your job, and you'll end up with a contractor on your doorstep. And again, most of the time there'll be additional expenses incurred during the day of install because they would have missed something, and then you'll go. It'll be a poor customer experience.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. On the topic of quotes, Ken's asking about a quote that they received for an inverter with a smaller capacity of 10 kilowatts than their solar panel array, which is 13.5 kilowatts. They were told that the inverter didn't match the system, that because the solar would generate more than the 10 kilowatts the inverter needed to handle. He's asking whether that makes sense to you.
Yeah. We oversized the PV arrays by 130%. So whatever your inverter size is, it's good practice to oversize it up. So the maximum limit with most inverters and with Solar Victorias and the SDCs and all that, 130%. So a 5 kilowatt inverter, you'll see a 5 kilowatt inverter with a 6.6 kilowatt array. And again, because we have inefficiencies and we have voltage drop and all these sorts of things happen on the roof. So you want to always oversize it. So if you have a bit of cloud cover, that 6.6 kilowatt system might only produce 5.5, and it will push down to your 5 kilowatt inverter and make sure that's humming at 100% always. So it's very common. So just general rule of thumb, times your inverter by 1.3. That's sort of the maximum size panels that we can get on your roof, unless we have a battery, and then we can go a bit further. So I won't get too technical, but to answer that question, absolutely, that's fine.
And I'm an example of that, Trent. I've got 12.5 kilowatts on the roof, but only an 8 kilowatt inverter. But I'm DC coupled, and a big chunk of those panels are on south facing, which do not produce anywhere near as much as the others. So the 12 and a bit kilowatts going into an 8 kilowatt inverter is not a problem for me at all. But again, that was a discussion with the installer.
Right. Well, Ken will phone you up, Russell, and ask you about your.
I'm sure he will.
No. One question that has a bit of an answer in the chat, but I think is worth discussing. How do you identify an installer with good administrative support? Glenn suggested personal references are a great thing. You know, chat to people who have installed a battery and ask them. Is there anything else that you guys can recommend?
It's a hard question to answer. Good, it is hard, and this is why it's hard, and we can understand from a customer perspective, like, how do you choose a good installer? It's a really difficult question, because unless you can jump into these businesses and open the doors and see everyone, that's when you can see these things. Because a lot of the time you're making a phone call, you don't know where they're coming from. I would see, do they have a presence? Do they have an on-site presence somewhere? Where do they operate from? You should be able to call in and go, hey, can I come to your factory to have a look, or whatever? They should be open to that, right? So we can meet and see the team. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's someone else that might be able to answer that question.
Well, it's difficult. I would like to favour a little local Sparky. The problem is the little local Sparky, he's the guy who's on the tools. He doesn't have that admin capability. He compared with some of the other bigger guys like Trent, he doesn't have people who can spend time actually understanding the intricacies and the software changes of different systems as they evolve, because your little Sparky's on the tools all the time. So there is, as much as I'd like to support the small guy as much as possible, in this case, scale is important. Also important when it comes to a warranty perspective of a little guy is more likely to go out of business than maybe a bigger guy. That's not necessarily always true, but there's certainly from a cash flow perspective, which, as Trent said, was so damned important, a little guy is more likely to have that sort of problem than a bigger guy.
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah, it's definitely, sorry about this, Sarah, but it's quite a vicious industry for the installation companies, because a lot of them aren't the bigger guys, right? They are a lot of smaller guys. We rely on so many small businesses in Australia to run it, right? And they're generally operations of 5 or less employees, and business is dangerous. You know, most businesses, 80% of them fail within the first 5 years, and that's real and true. And as Russell said, it's hard. How do we support them? It's a big issue in the industry, right? And it's something that, you know, we're trying to solve. But yeah, it's very hard.
And I'll admit, I got mine wrong. I went for it with a smaller guy, and soon after he decided to pack up shop and go fishing. He didn't go broke, but he just decided he didn't like facing the administrative bullshit that Trent faces with his admin team. So this guy just went fishing, and now Trent's looking after my warranty and situation for me.
This might be a good place to ask from the Q&A. Does Lighter Footprints provide a list of recommendations for installers? That would be very useful. We do not. I hope Jenny will shake her head at me if I'm incorrect. Lighter Footprints doesn't have a list of recommended installers, but Electrified Burundara may do. Do you have that on hand, Russell?
We do not at the moment. Jenny and I are working very closely with council. Council have a plan to develop a referral scheme, as we put it. However, the government's pretty good at what they do. So Solar Victoria have got a list of accredited suppliers, which is good. And SEC are about to come back into the fray. Trent, I don't know whether you know any more that you're allowed to disclose, but the SEC are going to start playing a role in recommending products and suppliers as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that should be coming this half of the year, guys. So just watch out for the SEC launch. But yeah.
Let me give a little plug. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere, and we'll be sure to shout that from the rooftops when it comes out. Now, we did have one question submitted by email before the session, so we might just close with that one, given we want everyone to get to bed at a reasonable hour. So this is another question around retrofitting batteries to recently installed solar systems. You've talked a bit about fire requirement ratings for timber walls. You've talked a little about cabling length, but broadly speaking, can you give any do's and don'ts for retrofitting a battery to an existing solar system?
Sorry, I just missed the first bit of that question, Sarah.
Oh, what are the do's and don'ts if you have a solar system recently installed, but you're retrofitting a battery?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, like if it's a recently installed solar system, you don't necessarily need to replace your inverter and all that sort of stuff, especially if you get like a AC/DC battery. So a lot of questions asked, you know, I've got an older system, I'm not trying to retain it. Can I just add a battery to it? Yes, you can. Most of the time, yes, you can. You either need to upgrade your inverter to a hybrid inverter so it can talk to the battery or charge the battery, or you can replace the whole inverter with an AC/DC coupled battery, and that's where like that Sigenergy battery is a really good replacement. And that will also allow you to add more solar panels on the roof as well. So you can, if the system is in good nick, you can retain your old system on the roof as well. And if you would need to increase the size, you can. But there will come to a point where you actually need to pull off your old solar system. If it's, if it's more than 12 years old, again, the panels and the footprint they take up, we've had so much development happen to panels, and the density of how much we can fit on a panel now, like the same size panel, like physical size, is nearly at 100% more than what it was, 10 years ago. And so it's double its output in the same size. So if you're spending money to get this battery put in, and again, you can claim SDCs on the solar systems when they're this old. And so the SDCs nearly equate to covering the cost of the panels alone. And so if you view it in that lens, it's sometimes better to just replace it all new, because you're getting a much bigger PV array, which is going to fill your battery up. It's going to do that. Now, in regards to cost and cable length and all that, yeah, the further away you take your battery from your switchboard and inverter, the more money it's going to cost. Especially if we're going to do a whole home backup, where your battery goes and the gateway and all the components with it, the further away from you, we've got to run thick cables back to your switchboard. And so we had, just to give you an example, we had a customer, they wanted to put their batteries, they could have put their batteries, the problem is most switchboards are near your front door, right? So the cheapest place is to put a dirty big battery right near your front door, and it might not look so sightly. And so we've got to think about, well, how can we just sort of tuck it around the corner, most cost effective? This particular customer wanted to put it in his shed out the back. So we had to run thick cables through his roof all the way to the back of his house, underground, and then into his shed. Right? Absolutely can be done, but it was going to cost him like an extra $5,000 just in cable running time to do that one part. $5,000 could be saved if we just put it next to the board. So again, these are the decisions need to be made, and they do have a huge impact on cost. And if you weren't going the full home backup, you'll save some money, because we don't have to do long cable runs. The longer the cable run, the thicker the cable's got to be. Copper's expensive. Copper's just gone up 15% globally. We're also about to get a 20% price hike on all solar panels. So just noting that we've received 3 price adjustments by the end of this month, and all solar systems are all going up. China, there's been something happen with the rebates over there when they're exporting, and that's affecting Australia. So 15% copper rise, 20% solar panel rise. It's coming, and you should start seeing price increases in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Interesting. That's fantastic. Look, we might have to leave it there, I'm sorry. So if we've not got to your Q&A, I do apologise, but hopefully that's been informative for everyone. But to close us off for the evening, I would just like to start with a huge thanks to all of the participants today, everyone who's been popping your questions in the chat. That's why we're all here, so thank you for coming along. But of course, a very special thank you to our speakers. It is always popular to hear from Trent and Russell and all of the homeowners. So we can't thank you enough, and we do apologise that I can't slip you a bottle of wine at the end of this one. But you certainly are much appreciated. We were thrilled with the RSVPs tonight, and we hope everyone's found it useful. To close us off, I will just let you know about a couple of other upcoming opportunities. So if we have a next slide, fantastic. I'll let you know first that there's, the recording of tonight is going to be on our YouTube channel. If you would like to take a look back at anything, and we've got a load of other battery resources uploaded to there that you can hear from Trent and Russell and co in detail again. And we would also love to have you along in 2 weeks' time, similar webinar to this one, with, in this case, another set of renowned experts, but on a quite different topic. We've got Virginia Young from Wilderness Australia and Luke Chamberlain from Environmental Justice Australia. These guys are incredible advocates in the forest sector. They have decades of experience protecting Australia's forests, and on the 18th of Feb, 2 weeks from today, they're going to tell us all about the important role for forests in our climate systems. So if you're looking at this now, we hope you'll come along on the 18th, and the RSVP link is right in the chat for you. And then on March the 4th, we're lucky to have our first in-person event of the year with the ever popular Simon Holmes à Court. And this year his incredibly well-credentialed economist colleague from the Superpower Institute. They'll be giving us a look at Australia's energy systems, you know, where we've got to in 2025, where we're headed in 2026, what the opportunities are for Australia economically from the energy transition. We don't know for sure, but I think it will be a good news story, and it's always a fantastic presentation from Simon. So please come along to the Hawthorn Arts Centre, March the 4th, Wednesday, 7 p.m. for a 7:30 p.m. start, and that should be a good one. In the meantime, if I've got a next slide, just a couple of opportunities locally. First up, we've been speaking with the Stonington Council, just south of Boroondara, where we, I suppose, more traditionally operate. They're in the middle of putting together a sustainability and climate strategy, and it's taking submissions at the minute. So if you head to the link that's shown on the slide there, or that I'll just pop in the chat, you'd be very welcome to have your say about what you'd like to see happen in Stonington, especially if you're a resident down there. And last of all, I think just a couple of extra resources. Obviously, up in Boroondara, we're very lucky to have the services of Electrified Boroondara. They have stacks of resources on their website. They will send a home energy guide to your house. Really, it's a one-stop shop if this evening has piqued your interest in all things electrification. Head along, check them out, speak to Russell. They will put you on the right path. In much the same way that I hope all the speakers tonight have done. So yeah, I guess just a final thanks to the speakers again, and a reminder that, you know, this is an event that is put on by Lighter Footprints, your local climate action group if you're in Boroondara. If you want to get involved in climate action, you know, campaign for the state election later in the year, these sorts of things, we would love to have you on board. If you're more led to donate $5, that helps too. So look, thank you so much for coming, everyone, and we'll hope to see you again in 2 weeks.